Say half of it. I'll let you say half. Morning, everybody. Firstly, I'd like to address the occasion. This is the first of which we hope will be many series of breakfasts with our friends Sunday morning. Although I realize that Sunday morning is a time that we all have an opportunity to sleep a little later, but in the times that we live, I think the center and all of the affiliate centers will become a center of not only cultural, religious, but also a social focal point, because of the necessity of being, what I say, wired into the light force of God. On a note that I concluded the Shabbat yesterday, I brought to our attention the matter that was dealt with concerning Abraham's instruction to his servant Eliezer to find a wife for his son Isaac. And he was instructed to take a wife from any other family, namely his family, but also made Eliezer take a vow that he would not bring back a wife from the Canaanites. And the question that immediately should be raised is the idea of, why did Abraham have to instruct Eliezer, not only instruct him as to what kind of daughter-in-law he preferred for Isaac, but why would he insist that Eliezer take a vow, the servant take a vow, that he would not bring him back a daughter-in-law not to his choice or to his liking? Let's assume he did bring back a girl from a nation or a family that he did not prefer. He then could tell him, well, no, this is not for my son Isaac. Why did he insist on Eliezer taking a vow? And the other aspect that is worth noting is the idea that as Eliezer was looking for signs from God, if the light force of God is with him, each time he would put another test to ascertain whether this girl that he ultimately finds for his master's son would indeed be the soulmate of his master's son. And it goes on to say he has the first test, and the first test was ascertained, and he says, well, now let's see if God continues to be with me. And then he goes on through another test. And again, not satisfied with, well, it's obvious that the hand of the Lord is present. He was still not satisfied. And the question is, why wouldn't he be satisfied? After all, he had laid down, as the example mentioned in the Torah, he had said to himself that if the first girl that comes, mind you, he doesn't know who this girl is, he doesn't know from which family this girl comes from, and he says the first girl that comes and will offer her pitcher with water to provide drink for myself, and then on top of it, not only offer me to drink, but then go back, fill up the pitcher again, and say, now, would you also want water to feed your camels and your other animals that you've taken along with you? And lo and behold, this is what happened. The first girl that came, offered. This was Rivka. And then he says, well, he's still not sure. This certainly was for all of us present here, we certainly would have considered this as a sign of God, coming out of nowhere and fulfilling these specific requirements. And yet he wasn't sure. And so yesterday, and it's worth repeating, especially if we're Jewish, the idea that when you're not wired to the light force, unfortunately that is the problem in the world. We're not connected the way we should be to the light force. And what the Torah wants to teach us with that particular incident is the idea that even though you are connected to the light force, you're wired right in, but nevertheless, doubts will always spring up. Why will doubts spring up? Even though you've gotten very specific, precise signs that things are going to be good. It's going to work out. After Eliezer's first test that he proposed for this girl that would appear, I mean, that should have been enough of evidence to support the idea that indeed this was the girl for Isaac. No, because the Torah is teaching us that the natural tendency for man is to be swallowed up with each incident as he goes along in life. In other words, if things are going well, then suddenly a problem arises, and then he feels, well, now what happens? As if it's all over with at times, or we have a real serious problem here. And is God there with me? And is God going to help me? Etc. And of course, we have seen in past history that God is not always with the people, as it appears. He wasn't there supposedly in the time of the Holocaust. Wasn't there in time of the past 2,000 years. In fact, if we were to deeply penetrate the ideas in history of when was God with us, we would find them far in between, as if he's almost never there. He's almost never there. And yet, we continue to go to the synagogue, we continue to pray to God, and anyone who finds himself in need is going to say, God, help me. If he thinks there's no other alternative, it's only when he thinks there are other alternatives that maybe he might forget about God. But there are times when irrespective of how deep our religious feelings or affiliations are with religion, even the atheist at times will say, God help me. God help me. And yet, it always appears as if God's never around. Like Eliezer. Here's a perfect example of God's presence, and yet he still questioned whether now that she appeared, is she going to be from the Canaanites, whom Abraham specifically instructed Eliezer not to bring back a girl from the Canaanites, and he was still in doubt. And then he pursued on and asked who she was, etc. Because the Torah is teaching us human nature, and more so if you're Jewish, that the desire to receive is so strong that if things can be going well for 40 years and suddenly we find ourselves faced with stumbling blocks or periods of unfulfillment, we suddenly feel that God has abandoned us. Well, why didn't God abandon us so many years prior? It is because we haven't yet begun to understand that if you are wired to the light force, then the problems that seem to come, and they always do in life, are there for test purposes only. Only for testing us, do you really believe in God? Do you believe in God when things are great? Or do you also believe in God when things are down? When things are not working out the way you believe? Now, why does God play maybe those kind of games with us, as it appears he does? I mean, here he can bring a person to such extreme wealth, and in 2 years remove $14 billion. That's a lot of money. I use that as the classic example. The interest of every minute amounts to $10,000 a minute. That's a lot of money. And yet, in 2 years, all of that could vanish. Does that mean suddenly God abandoned these people? The answer is that when things are going well, like in the case of Eliezer, he first was presenting this kind of test to see if God is there with him. And then after God is with him, well, now he'll have another test. We kind of forget, because the Dark Lord is there always making an attempt to penetrate our connection with the light force. That's his job. That's why he's called the Dark Lord. He wants to bring in the negativity into our lives. That's his purpose. Now he knows that the only time that he could infiltrate people is when things are going pretty good. And then we kind of become complacent and think, well, now I'm a healthy person. I've always been healthy. Is it the light force that provides this health for me? Or it's just natural that everyone is healthy? But that's not true. We're not all healthy. In fact, the moment we reach the age of 20, we're told, now we've gone into a degenerative process. But we don't see the blatant illness, chas v'shalom, that suddenly is thrust upon us, and therefore we take everything for granted as if that belongs to us. That's part of our domain. And the truth of the matter is, nothing is part of our domain. Even when we have it, it's not part of our domain. It's not our possession. That's when you've got to indicate your connection, your wiring into the light force. Not when things are bad. When things are already bad, now you call upon God, but you've told God to take a vacation, maybe for 40 years, when you really felt you have no need for God. Things were just great. We're proceeding on schedule. This is what this portion of the reading is about. This is what Kabbalah is making an attempt to teach us. To raise our consciousness, raise our awareness, and I'm not saying it's easy. The concept is easy. The understanding is so simple that, of course, we have seen people who had wealth of $14 billion and overnight lost it. How could you lose so much money? How could you lose it? I mean, it just takes time to lose money. That kind of money takes time. And how do people suddenly become ill overnight? That also how do these things happen? Only to indicate to us that obviously we're not in control, or certainly we haven't got the control to the extent that we believe we do have. This is so simple. I haven't said anything that is beyond the comprehension of an average individual. And what makes it so difficult for us not to be aware and be conscious of this idea that we need the support of the light force, because nobody has guarantees of any sort. Why do we forget? Why do we forget that? And the moment we forget, says Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the moment you forget, then you have assumed that the light force is not necessary at that given moment. And when we're in an automobile on the highway, when we reach our destination, that's expected. When you walk into your car and arrive where you were headed for, that's expected. Why is it expected? And in fact, it'll always be expected. That's where the consciousness of people are. And that's where they abandon the light force. Because, well, of course I'm going to get there. But wait a second, there is a statistic. Now see, this is how rational it becomes. There is a statistic that says so many people will not reach their destination. Well, what's the answer of a human being? Well, that's somebody else, not me. I'm not part of that statistic. Nobody's part of the statistic. I'm just wondering, well, then who is? If it's always him, he, she, always somebody else. This is the dark Lord working his little games upon us. And we think we're so bright. And yet I've said something very simple. I don't believe what I have just stated on behalf of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is so difficult for you to comprehend. So simple. And yet, as well as often as we repeat each day a particular prayer, in the morning prayer, Mizmor Todah, we thank God for all the miracles that we did not see. And I'm not referring to the miracle of riding down the highway and like a moment before, this drunk came in onto the highway and struck the car in front of him, killed Chas v'Sholom the occupants, and had I been there only 30 seconds before, it would have been me. That's an obvious miracle. But what about the times that we don't see what could have happened? We have a daily prayer for that. Why do we have a daily prayer? It's not the prayer. It's trying to instill, that prayer is trying to instill within us a consciousness that because we abandon, we do not demand, and God says you can demand all day, and I'll be there for you. When you call me all day, I will be there for you. But the moment you say, well, right now I don't need you, and he goes out on vacation, out for lunch. Now you're calling him when you asked him to go out to lunch. And then he doesn't respond. And then you have complaints. God, where are you when I need you most? And God says, but you needed me every day. Were you certain with your life every day? Were you certain with every aspect of your relationships every day? The answer is no. But that is the power of the dark Lord. That is what Eliezer was referring to. Eliezer at that time was supposed to be representing another feature, another side. And when we ask, why did Abraham insist on a vow when all Abraham had to do when this girl would come back, and let's say she was not from the family that Abraham preferred, all he could say is, sorry, Eliezer, you brought the wrong woman for my son. Yet he required of Eliezer that he accept the vow, and it says specifically, and Eliezer said, yes, I accept the vow. What is a vow? What is a vow? Very interesting. Kol Nidrei, on Yom Kippur, we cancel vows. This is the most important part of the Yom Kippur service. Jews all over the world, those who still do it. It's not all Jews over the world. I mean, I have many friends that, unfortunately in Israel, the movies are closed down, but they have friends that they can get together and play some cards and other things. Not everybody is into Yom Kippur. Now, you can go out on the beach on Yom Kippur, and we once had, we took a hotel and we had our Yom Kippur service. I mean, during the day you saw people having a good time on the beach. I didn't blame them. They didn't find anything more appreciative in the synagogue. So you don't come to the synagogue because you want to suffer. I didn't think so. Maybe some do. But they took the road, and they made the decision that they would not go to synagogue. But in any event, Kol Nidrei is considered the most important feature of the Yom Kippur prayer. And yet if you just look into the translation of the Yom Kippur prayer, you will notice we nullify vows. Now, come on, rabbis. I mean, if you want to give us a real prayer, you know what Yom Kippur is about? The day we want to ask God, forgive us, although I've been doing this been cheating and stealing and all the things that you told me not to do, and I've been doing that all year, and now I come once a year at least and say, hey, God, you gave me one day of the year that I can repent, so I'm repenting. That prayer doesn't even discuss tshuva. It doesn't even discuss repentance. We're not even asking for forgiveness. Wouldn't you assume that the most important part of the prayer would be asking God for forgiveness? No reflection, no reference to anything that resembles forgiveness. Why is that the most important part of the prayer? Of all year, in fact. Cancellation, nullification of vows. And the Zohar, not that clear, but if you devote a little time to it, then it becomes obvious. What is a vow? What is a vow? Something, or a promise, which is also mentioned in the Nidre, Neder. Neder means a promise. Shvuah is a vow, an oath. What do they represent, essentially? I promise I will do this. I promise I will do that. And I did not fulfill an oath that I may have taken, or I did not fulfill the promise that I had made. What we see here, says the Zohar, is the reality of life. When I asked, the prayer should say, look, God, I stole yesterday. I stole. Forgive me. God, yesterday I murdered. Forgive me. God, I did this, I did that. All of those things, those terrible things that I did. Forgive me. Those actions are secondary features of consciousness, obviously. Why does someone kill? If he just went out because he went berserk, we know not only from a standpoint of American criminal law, he can claim and plead insanity. In the Torah too, if the man was not of sound mind, he would not be guilty of murder and could not be put to death. Because the action, the stealing, is secondary. The reason someone pays for his crime is not, says the Torah according to the Zohar, is not because of the action. Because the action represents only 1% of reality, without going into this other area. But science supports that idea, and of course this idea is what is presented in the Torah via the Kabbalah, that there is nothing more than this world than consciousness. Nothing. We only know a thief, and I know some people say the only way you can tell a thief is the one who's caught, but we know that a thief is someone who steals. But the Zohar goes on to say when he pays the price for stealing, it is not because he stole, but rather because of the reality of his consciousness, which dictated in his mind that he has now decided to steal. Of course, if he does not steal, then we do not combine the consciousness to the actual materialization of his consciousness. But what is most important, what is significant, is the idea of consciousness. That's what the Torah wants to teach us. It's where your consciousness is. That's where you are. If you're a thief in consciousness. Then, whether you're successful, you're caught, or you're not caught, that's secondary. When when we say Kol Nidrei, and we want to nullify and cancel these vows said what? I promise. No, I promised, and I didn't fulfill it. Says the Zohar, the moment that you said, I promise, or I will do, the action already has been done. Action has been done. I promise to give $1 to charity today. That charity receives $1. But there is a requirement of the 1% as well. Now, you did not fulfill the 1%. And the rewards for promising to do good. I mean, when do you say, I promise? I promise to do some good. Not that I promise to kill people. Promise is always in terms of some affirmative, some positive action, of which immediately, and this is the way the natural laws and principles of the universe operate. The minute you say, I'm giving, you are immediately rewarded because you've accomplished 99% of the action. And therefore, immediately, you're rewarded. But if he doesn't fulfill that 1%, now what he's done is receive this reward without having to fulfill the 1% requirement. He's gotten something for nothing. This is what life is about. This is why Kol Nidrei is the most important part of the prayer. Because it's dealing with the consciousness. Our consciousness. Not the fact that I did steal or I didn't. Because on a physical level, I can return that. If I stole $1, I can give back $1. But it went beyond. There was a negative action that I thrust into the cosmos. And when there are good people around that suddenly act in an intolerant or a negative way, is because, and that's the problem today, the cosmos is so filled with negative consciousness. Therefore, Kol Nidrei is to remove these negative consciousness, not the actions. Actions, then we have the regular prayer. We ask God to forgive us for stealing, for doing that, for doing this, for doing that. But the most important aspect is consciousness. Consciousness. When you think evil, when you think intolerance, you've already impregnated the cosmos. Because the scientists tell us that anything of a physical nature is illusionary. Without going into how they rationalize it, how they've come to this theoretical conclusion. But it is an absolute conclusion of 20th century physics. I don't have to explain away how it works or how it doesn't work or why it works or why it doesn't work. I know how to explain away through Kabbalah, but that's not important. The idea is that there is nothing in this world but consciousness. Where your head is, and you've heard that expression, but we don't pay attention to the expression. Got to know where his head is. What do you got to know where his head is? You want to know what he's doing. Isn't that what you worry about? Or you want to know whether he's going to do the job or not? No, we want to know where his head is. Why do you want to know where his head is? Because there's nothing as important in any activity of humankind but the idea of consciousness. This is what Kabbalah, maybe a little ahead of its time, is trying to bring to the attention of the people. Because when you have consciousness and you raise your consciousness and you understand the importance of consciousness, with that consciousness you can then understand what the Dark Lord doesn't permit 99% of the people in the world to understand. That you should be happy and thank God for every moment that you breathe. Because you can eat a piece of food and one moment be gone, chas v'shalom. You could be on a ledge enjoying a party. One moment later and you're gone. But we don't think like that. Well, I don't want to be morbid about myself. I didn't say to be morbid. I didn't say to be despondent. On the contrary, I'm trying to share with you what the Zohar says. You want security for tomorrow is by thinking of how insecure you are yesterday. Because the moment you inject in your consciousness insecurity, hey, wait, God, I don't know, will you be giving me my next breath? Then you're asking, not only asking, you're demanding from God, be with me every minute. God will be with you every minute. Every minute that you say, be with me. But along comes the dark Lord and says, what are you asking God for? You put health, the business is great, a wonderful family relationship. What do you want now? What do you need God for now? That's the dark Lord. That's the dark Lord trying to remove a very simple consciousness that, without security, and I don't know where you can buy it. There's no store that I've made many attempts and have asked people if they can supply me with a store where you get the guarantees of health, where you can buy it. I've always said even life insurance. What a fraud. They call it life insurance. Right? Life insurance. But when do you collect? When the fellow drops dead. And they call it life insurance. And we stupid people fall into those traps. And yet, we could buy life insurance, according to the Zohar. There is a period we can actually buy it. You can't pay money for it, but you can have it. That's called life insurance. When I know I have security. Because I've been and I've done a certain thing according to the Zohar on Shavuot. I bought life insurance. But not the one you have to die to collect. Only to indicate how we fall into the trap of the dark Lord. This is his function. To swerve us away from what seems to be such a simple, certainly not in-depth consciousness of understanding that we really have no security every moment of the day. We don't have it. And then even if we achieve this consciousness, that we appreciate, God, you're giving me every breath of my life. God, you're giving me every moment of that which I have. That chas v'shalom in a moment can disappear. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I need you every moment. And then what happens suddenly when things don't go so great? Now we come back to Eliezer. I mean, they've been great for 50 years. Now suddenly they're not so great. God, where are you? If we can only take into our consciousness and remember what the Zohar said, if you want God, he's there. You want God. To be wired with God, yes. To be wired with God is your consciousness and nothing more. So you say, what do I put on the tefillin for? All day I'll sit and, God, be with me. Why do we have to go to work? Do I have to do nothing? God, be with me. In fact, there is the famous Kabbalistic story of, I think many of you did not hear, and it's worth repeating. As often as I repeat it to myself, it still becomes a little difficult, of the story of Black Velvet. That's the name of the story, Black Velvet. That's a story. In a particular city, there was this very wealthy man, and he had a daughter of marriageable age. He wanted to find a suitable young man that could become the husband of his daughter. And what he preferred was a young man who was a Talmid Chacham, very knowledgeable in Torah, and in fact would have the desire to be able to sit all day and all night, but have this desire for nothing else but to be connected with Torah, not to be involved with business and not to be involved with anything but Torah. And so naturally the place that he would seek out such a young man would be in the yeshiva. And he goes down to the yeshiva, speaks to the head of the yeshiva, and says, this is the kind of young man I would like. And of course, being a man of means, there would be no difficulty in supporting this young man together with my daughter. I'm prepared to establish a fund by which this young man and my daughter would be able to live happily ever after. And he finds the young man. Daughter marries this young man, and he gives him $100,000. And he says, this is the arrangement. Every year I go to the marketplace to buy for a whole year. I buy stuff, good stuff. There used to be the fairs where they used to go and buy things. And he says, I will use your $100,000 to purchase things which I think then we'll be able to sell, and you will have a profit, and so you could live on this, on the return of this $100,000, and therefore your principal will never be eaten up. And I'm a pretty good businessman at that. He said, but the only thing is that I want you to feel that you participated, not be bred of shame, like you're getting something for nothing. I want you to accompany me, and I want you to actually conclude the transaction. I look at what should be bought, but I want you to conclude the transaction. Okay. Now, the day of the fair came, and they traveled to this large city, and he says, now you go into the Bet HaKnesset, you sit and study, that's your job, you gotta do that, you pray that I'm successful, etc. That's my agreement with you, and when I'm ready to conclude some arrangements of purchase, I'll then call upon you. Meanwhile, why waste your time going with me, looking around for stuff to purchase? Okay. Goes and he says, and when I need the money, I'll come back, and I'll tell you to come with the money and do the purchases, whatever we had bought. And his father-in-law goes away. Lo and behold, in walks a man. He sees him sitting there by himself. I mean, everybody's working. Who's sitting in the Bet HaKnesset studying, like 11 o'clock in the morning? It's only people who don't want to work. Right? You know those people who, like him, just sits and studies all day. He says, look, you want to buy something? He says, well, what do you got to sell? He says, do you have money? He says, yeah, I have money. He says, well, I'm selling black velvet. How much you got? He says, why? He says, well, I have $100,000, and if you got enough black velvet, I'll buy black velvet. He says, yeah, I'll sell you the whole lot. It's 2 train loads of black velvet. He says, okay. Signs out transfers the bill of lading, whatever it was required, and gives him the money. Several hours later, his father-in-law comes back. He says, I found some stuff. The profit is enormous. In fact, maybe next year, you won't even have to come back with me because you'll have enough to live on for 2 years. He says, so come on with me. He says, I haven't got the money. He said, what'd you do with it? He says, I bought some stuff. He says, what'd you buy? He said, black velvet. He says, you bought black velvet for $100,000. He says, you're crazy. You may sell $50 worth a year. Who needs black velvet? And here he's got 2 train loads of black velvet. He says, you may sell this in 7 lifetimes. What could he do? The money is gone, and he's got the ownership of the black velvet. Okay. Naturally, the father-in-law's a little despondent. Now he realizes he's going to have to go back to supporting his son-in-law, and that's it. Go back to their town and sits there a while. One night, there's a bang on the door of the son-in-law. Opens up the door. The army. The army. I was frightened, in those days when a Jew sees the army coming to his door. I mean, what are they coming for? To lock him up in some dungeon. He says, what do you want? He says, we have to speak to you about something very important. He says, okay, come on. He says, well, what do you want? He says, we understand you have black velvet. He says, yeah, I have black velvet. He says, well, we want to buy it. How much you want to buy? We understand you have 2 train loads of black velvet. We're willing to pay you $5 a yard. He says, wait a second. He had bought it for about 50 cents. Wait a second. No. He says, we'll give you 10. He says, wait a second. He doesn't want to make that kind of profit. And he bought it for 50 cents. And the guy says, I'm offering you $15 And that's it. Or not, we'll take it away from you without paying anything. And they walk out, and obviously he made a lot of money. Right? Made a lot of money. That's the story of black velvet.
You didn't tell him why he wants the black velvet.
No, I'm going to come to it. Why would the army want the black velvet? This is the punchline. After they close the deal and he says, why do you need all this black velvet? My father says that I'll probably sell about 1 yard a year. And here I've got maybe, I don't know how many, hundreds of thousands of yards. Didn't you hear? No. The king died. He says, oh, I didn't know that. Okay, so the king died. Now what? He says, the king in his will stated that from the palace to the royal cemetery, which was like about 200 miles away, should be covered with black velvet. And we went all over the country, and we couldn't find one yard of black velvet. And then they finally said, yeah, they heard that one crazy man bought up all the black velvet. That's the story of black velvet. It's all in consciousness. We all struggle. We have to go to work. Do we really have to go to work? Well, that's the extreme. No, you don't have to go to work. Then am I suggesting that we don't go to work? No, there's a 1% reality, physical reality has to be dealt with. That's the level of that's where the troubles are. We have to be part of that. To see whether, when you have a problem, whether you're still saying, God, thank you for the minute that I'm alive. Because as long as we keep saying, God, thank you for the minute I'm alive, and I need you for the next second, He'll never disappear. But because we deal in the physical reality world, the Dark Lord has his opportunities. In business, it suddenly goes bad. In that moment, you're supposed to say, hey, wait a second. It's been going good all this while. To whom do I owe this to? Oh, I owe it to God. And now that it seems to be going wrong, what do you do then? Now, what do? You run to an economist, you run to your accountant, and you run to whoever to see what can be done. You know what? All you had to do is say, hey, God, help me figure out how to get this thing, how to get me through this thing. That's the moment when we separate the men from the boys. At that moment, we lose touch of being wired into the life force of God. Most of us, unfortunately, are never wired, because we're never thanking God for every moment that He's given me until this time. That who says that was mine, that was my possession? Who said so? If you're in this consciousness, you're made. And then, of course, when things are not going as well as you would like them to go, then you can say, well, God, where are you? Well, God is saying sometimes, listen, are you really wired into me, or are you wired into me because every day I'm giving you life, every day I'm giving you your necessities, and therefore you're wired in? What happens when you're not going to have exactly what you think you'd like to have, and things are not going your way? Are you still wired or not? Or then you're saying, God, where are you? I mean, but He was there yesterday. Why won't He be there today? That's the part of the Dark Lord who's been given permission to provide us with what I call a problem as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to strengthen our connection with the life force. But without the light force, I offer again, anyone, I will drop Kabbalah, as I usually say, and tell me the store where I can purchase security. I'm ready. But I don't mean the life insurance that they sell. I'm talking about the security for tomorrow. You got another store? If there's no other store in the absence of any other place, why don't we try this one? That's all Kabbalah says. Try this one. It might even work. That's all. Try it. Try it. But it requires consciousness. That's what Avram was telling his son-in-law, his servant. He made him swear. Why? Because if he knew that he would not be guided by his consciousness, which is the essential feature of us, who are we? This physical human being that occupies, if compressed, 1% of the space we occupy? That's all we occupy, 1%. If everything, all the atoms were condensed, it would of the area that this physical body is blown up, like we're all a lot of baloney. That's where you get baloney from. We're blown up. We all got everything the same. We know it all, Nobody can teach us anything. I could sit with people sometimes for an hour. I got nothing to say. I'm listening to what this person has to say, right? Some people know it all. I thank God I only listen. I try not. They make me speak. I would have enjoyed someone else, getting up if they had some words of Zohar to tell us that could assist us, not just to hear ourselves talk. That's why I always have to sign over saying what you heard today was not mine. Everything that we have, thoughts that come to us, they're not ours. How many of you have questioned for a moment as you see me talking? Am I asking my mind, what do I say next? And when you talk, do you ask your mind, you're a robot. So if you're at least a robot for light, good. But if you're a robot for stupidity, and your stupid nonsense for self-aggrandizement, what is that? That's the Dark Lord. But we never ask ourselves, you're either the Dark Lord's representative or the Light's representative. You're never your own. When you're in court, do you ask every time, you couldn't do that, stop every minute and ask you, hey, brain, tell me, what do I say next? Would they let you continue that way? Wait a second, Judge. Yeah, now I want to say that. Oh, but it's got to be every word, right? Do we think as we talk? Are we conscious when we talk? Think about it. We're so robotic. In fact, we have no choice. We are robotic. The question is whether you're wired into the light force. In the light force, he don't make mistakes. The Dark Lord makes sure that we speak stupidity. Consciousness is all that we possess. All that we possess. Even that's robotic. Now, putting on tefillin, the Shabbat, all those things, they're only there for the 1%. For what reason? To keep the Dark Lord out. That's all that happened on Mount Sinai. It wasn't create a religion. I'm going to discuss that more fully tonight. There's no such thing as a Jewish religion. The thing is a fraud. The thing is a fraud. What happened on Mount Sinai was for the first time a system was revealed to the Jews. So call it a Jewish methodology. I have no objection. If you called it candy, I'd also accept it. A methodology by which I can keep the Dark Lord out. That 1% of where he can, that little opening, if he can get in, you're gone. You're gone. The light force could have helped you for 50 years with $14.5 billion, and overnight it's gone. Just let the Dark Lord get in there for a minute. That's all he needs. 1 minute, and he can twist everything. He can end lives, chas v'shalom. He can do anything just to get you to remove your consciousness from the light force. That's all he has in mind. So all of these things that we were given on Mount Sinai was only to keep the Dark Lord, at bay. Nothing more. It has nothing to do with the light force. It has nothing to do in the service of the Lord. It has nothing to do with I'm doing this so God will give me good points after 120 years. Nothing to do with it. Nothing. When it says don't steal, not because I should be a good boy. It's not the reason. The only reason of not stealing is because of your consciousness. You've got negative consciousness. Don't you see that belongs to that person? He may need it. Maybe he needs it. Are you giving enough conscious thought to his needs too? That's why you're not supposed to steal. Not because you should be a good person, but that your consciousness should be aware of not putting negativity into the conscious. Consider another person. That's what it's all about. It's to keep the Dark Lord at bay. And you see, you can put on your tefillin. You can keep the Shabbat. You can keep all of those things. Says the Talmud, it didn't prevent the destruction of the temple. The total fulfillment of all of the Torah's commandments could not prevent the destruction, because there was just one idea that the consciousness of the Jew was not present. You know what that was? Intolerance. Intolerance? Come on. So I have a little intolerance for my neighbor. That's enough reason for the destruction of the temple? Because I had intolerance? But I didn't steal. I didn't murder. I put on my tefillin. I observed Rosh Hashanah. I observed Yom Kippur. I've done everything. So I had sinat chinam. You know, in fact, why is that so funny? I mean, all it was, by the way, was to give a contemporary example that my neighbor had 42 Rolls Royces in his garage, and I also had 42. Sinat chinam means I couldn't bear the sight that he also had 42. Mind you, that's all it was. Sinat chinam means not because he had money and I didn't, which the Torah says we understand. In consciousness, a person who doesn't have can be envious of someone who does have. No! Each one had. He couldn't bear the fact that someone else also had. That's sinat chinam. You imagine the degree of consciousness of what brought the destruction of the temple? That, says the Talmud, was the reason. Only consciousness. There was no stealing going on. There was no murder going on. They were observing all the Torah and all the mitzvot. That is not enough to keep the Holocaust from appearing day in and day out, time after time, and no change. And I'm telling you, the Zohar says this could be the only change. If we could only achieve that little awareness. You don't have to cheat. There's enough in the world for everybody. More than enough for everybody. The world was created balanced. Man, like taking away the Amazon forest, doing other things to destroy. But the world is balanced to support the rich and that the poor will never go hungry. Should they be rich and should they be poor? Yes, because that provides the giving and sharing and receiving idea. So these are things that also create balance in the entire universe. But the world is balanced. Man, with his inhumanity, with his evil consciousness, because that's where the action is. Where's your consciousness? Where's your head? And that's what the Zohar and Kabbalah wants to teach us. Raise that consciousness, not so you become a better person, that you have everything that was originally intended. The God's thought of creation was lehitiv, to provide everyone. It was not his idea to play little Holocaust games with us, which is the idea that we all should be coming to right now. Is all he does for the last 2,000 years is play these little Holocaust games. And hopefully that we'll let that idea seep into us. I brought to the attention of someone this morning. Murphy's Law. If anything can go wrong, it goes wrong. And I asked the obvious question. Why did he say if everything that could go wrong goes wrong? Why did he say if everything that could go right will go right? And this principle is accepted all over the world. Did you ever think for a moment, stop for a minute to think, why does it have to be that way? Why can't it be the other way? In fact, doesn't that indicate to us how evil the world is? How there is a lack of the light force? How there is no supervision from God? Isn't it clear to us that he's just let this world fend for itself? The answer is no. Answer is that little law of Murphy's, which he didn't understand, absolutely did not understand, but he was of a robotic consciousness nature, and this was his purpose in life. We should refer to Murphy's law that says, give the dark Lord a little opening. You could have been with the light force all your life, But the moment you have a little problem, you say, God, where are you today? Well, where was he for the last 40 years? How come you didn't say it then? I mean, you had. You didn't need him. Well, you see, for 40 years you didn't need him. Now you're asking him to come. Didn't you put out the sign out for lunch? You didn't want him. That's what Murphy's Law is about. That's what the Torah is about. To try to make sure that there's a circuitry, you see, that no separation, no opening that the dark law can get in, and with God's help. The center here in Los Angeles, heaven knows that they're certainly here in Los Angeles. We don't want to talk about recessions. We don't want to talk about depressions. We don't want to talk about 15,000 people leaving California every day. What's the end of it? Oh, so we'll watch the statistics ride by like on a ticker tape. That's what we're doing with our lives. Think about it. You watch life go by. You're like in a movie watching your life go by. Are you participating in the action? How many of us are participating? You mean you put up a building, did not put up a building? That building could be gone in 100 years, 200 years. Nobody will ever know it was even there. I'm talking about participating in change in this world. If there's the ticker tape, all of a sudden I say, stop. No, I'm going to put something into that. I'm splicing it. I'm making a change. I want to change history. Because building another building, that's been done before you. And what you're adding is what? Is it something that's necessary? You mean if you didn't put up this office building, the people will be now having their offices in the streets? Is that your contribution? Who needs it? Oh, I put up another apartment house. Who needs it? People sleeping in the streets, a lack of housing, and that's why you put it up? What's your contribution? That's not a contribution. Sell carpets. Can't get along without Persian carpets. I mean, what would happen if I didn't have? If I imported the carpets from China? So they're not as good. Won't serve the purpose? What's my contribution? Yes, I have to make a living. That's the trouble with us. We keep making a living. When are we going to start living? All we do is make livings. When are we going to start living? The only way you can start living is by making a change in that ticker tape, which is our lives as we watch it go by. And with this, the light of Kabbalah, we can achieve that consciousness. Amen.
Can I ask a question? What is the difference between consciousness and thinking? Not thinking, machshavot ra'ot.
I think if you read the new book, To the Power of One, Our Mind Conscious, I think you'll have your answer. I think you have your answer. It's better that you get your answer than I give it to you, because when I give it to you, it's just a piece of information. It doesn't become knowledge. Knowledge is what you work out. That's the difference between Kabbalah. And I know I'm headed for being without a job, because everyone here is going to become knowledgeable. They won't need me. I know it. It's a dangerous thing. But that's where it should be. That's where it should be. Okay.